Electricity has been an indispensable part of our life since ages. What is the source of this electricity? Electric charge is the source of this electricity. What is an electric charge? Electric charge, it is the basic physical property of matter, or you can say it is the inherent property of matter. Now matter, any material, it is made up of atoms. So if we consider the structure of an atom, you will see that there is a nucleus in between. This nucleus contains protons and neutrons, right? So nucleus, we can say that the nucleus in the center, it contains protons plus neutrons, right? Now, between these, the protons are positively charged and neutrons are neutral in nature, and therefore this nucleus is positive in nature, right? Around this nucleus, you have orbits. We have certain number of orbits depending upon the element which we are considering. In these orbits revolve the electrons. Now these electrons are negative in nature, right? So nucleus has protons which is positive in nature. Electrons are around this orbit which are negative in nature. Now the charge on each proton is 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19 coulomb. 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19 coulomb. This is the positive charge on the proton, and each electron has an equal amount of negative charge, right? So protons are positively charged by a charge of 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19 coulomb, and electrons have negative charge on them. Each electron has a charge of negative 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19 coulomb. And neutrons, as we had already said, that they are neutral in nature. Now, generally, any body has equal number of protons and neutrons. Equal number of protons and electrons. What does that mean? That means that number of or the quantity of positive charge. Positive charge is equal to the negative charge. Positive charge on a body is equal to the negative charge on a body. Generally, this happens, right? And because of which this body remains electrically neutral. It remains electrically neutral. But in certain conditions, what happens? This balance is disturbed. This balance is disturbed. That means a body may gain electrons. It may gain electrons. If a body gains electrons, obviously what does that signify? It signifies that it has an excess of electrons. The body has excess of electrons, then definitely what does this signify? It signifies that the body becomes negatively charged. Negatively charged. Whereas the body which is losing the electrons, giving away its electrons, losing electrons or loses electrons, a body which loses electrons, it has a deficiency of electrons. Deficiency of electrons. And since the number of electrons are less, right? Since the number of electrons are less, then the body tends to become positively charged. Body becomes positively charged, right? Gain of electrons, excess electrons, body becomes negatively charged. A body loses electrons, definitely it has deficiency of electrons or less number of electrons, and therefore it becomes positively charged, right? Now let us take an example, a simple example. How many electrons are required to get 1 coulomb of negative charge? Now 1 coulomb of negative charge means that this body has excess of electrons, right? So let us assume that the number of electrons in the body is equal to n, small n, right? Charge on each electron is charge on each electron, as we had just seen, it is equal to 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19 coulomb. Obviously negative. I am just writing the magnitude. Total charge on the body is equal to capital Q, which is already given to you as 1 coulomb. So let us write it as 1 coulomb. Now if we form an equation, we can easily see that number of electrons multiplied by the charge on one electron gives you the total charge on the body. Number of electrons in the body multiplied by the charge on each electron gives you the total charge on the body, right? Now what we have to calculate, we have to calculate n. That is the number of electrons. That is what is asked to us. How many electrons, right? So Q over E gives you Q is 1 coulomb. E is 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19 coulomb. And the answer, once you will calculate, you will get this as 6.25 into 10 to the power 18 electrons. Right? 6.25 into 10 to the power 18 electrons. So this is how we get our number of electrons. Over here, one more thing which I wanted to tell you is, like a body gains electrons, it has excess of electrons, right? Loses electrons, it has a deficiency of electrons. So there are two very famous examples. One is that of a glass rod and silk cloth. If we have a glass rod, suppose we have a glass rod and we have a silk cloth, right? This is a silk cloth. If we rub the silk cloth on the glass rod, what happens is, this glass rod transfers some electrons to the silk cloth, so that the glass rod becomes positively charged and the silk cloth becomes negatively charged, because glass rod has transferred its electrons to the silk cloth. Similarly, there is one more example, that of an ebonite rod and fir cloth, right? And fir cloth. What happens if we rub this fir cloth and the ebonite rod? What happens is, fir cloth transfers some electrons to the ebonite rod, right? And therefore, ebonite rod tends to become negatively charged, whereas fir cloth tends to become positively charged, right? So this is how you gain or lose electrons, how a body gains or loses electrons. Then this numerical, I hope you all have understood. In case you have not understood, do mail us to ask. Now, another property of charges is that charges attract and repel each other depending upon their nature. If the charges are like proton and proton, that is, if two charges are positively charged, then they tend to repel each other. If two charges are negatively charged, then also they tend to repel each other. Which means if we have like charges, they will repel each other. If we have unlike charges, like one positive and one negative, they will tend to attract each other. So like charges repel each other, unlike charges attract each other. So I hope you have got the concept of charges, electric charges, the basic concept of electric charges. There's a quiz given. Do go through it and submit your answer.